What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan. So today I'm just kind of continuing along with our discussion of the AFC standings, the schedule, how I think things are going to shake out. I already finished the NFC last week, talking about all four divisions. I've completed the AFC uh, East so far. I'm going to move on. Today we're going to talk about the AFC South. Probably the next video after that will be AFC West. And then finally, hopefully there will be a little bit more clarity by the time the AFC North video comes out. But I'm probably going to have to make that a 5-team and not a 4-team issue, because depending on what happens with Cleveland's quarterback situation, that will be a tremendously different discussion overall. But today we're going to focus on the AFC South, which arguably is the weakest overall division this year in football, as well, definitely for the AFC and possibly for the entire NFL this year. They carry two of the worst teams in football on their roster, and then I'm not sure that last year's teams are going to be, their top two are going to be that much better. They only had one team make the playoffs last year, and it was the number one overall, who then failed to put away Cincinnati in the first round. But anyways, let's move right into it. Speaking of said team, Tennessee Titans. So the Titans finished last year at 14-3. They had a winning record and were able to be the number one seed overall in the AFC. They got a bye, and then they squandered it with a loss to the eventual AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. Fairly close game overall, but they just couldn't put it away. So Derrick Henry did not look very good in that game, and hopefully coming off of injury and having a full offseason to rest, he is back to normal, because he was on pace to put up some major numbers last year. He probably could have had a 2,500 plus yard rushing season, and that would have been in just a normal 16 game season. He was very, very close to setting a record for rushing last year, or on that path, before he unfortunately got hurt. But again, this team is going to completely run through Derrick Henry, because they did also have a major loss. So let's just talk about that. Major losses for this team. They traded A.J. Brown. Holy crap. That is a terrible, terrible thing for them. They did manage to get some replacements. We'll talk about that. Other guys they lost both of their backup running backs, and Darrington Evans, and who else did they have? Donta Foreman. Donta Foreman is now in Carolina. I don't think Evans has found a home yet. They've also lost Julio Jones. They probably regret making that trade. It was a good thing for the Falcons in the long run, but Julio just wasn't himself last year. Hopefully he finds a team and does well this coming year. They also lost Anthony Firkser, their tight end, Rashad Evans, both of those guys to the Falcons, and then also Roger Saffold. So, notable additions, they did get Robert Woods in a trade with the Rams. They acquired Austin Hooper, who I think is arguably better than Firkser, who they lost. Jeff Swaim out of Dallas as well, another a tight end who probably could have been better, except for the emergence of Dalton Schultz there. And then they also got Ben Jones and Harold Landry in free agency. Guys that they got in the draft. Traylon Burks showed up to camp, not ready to go, overweight, not in shape. Hopefully he's good, because they are counting on him to be the next A.J. Brown for that franchise. And then other guys, they got Roger McCreary at corner, Malik Willis in the third round. They didn't have to reach for him, and he fell into their laps. He very well could end up playing midway through the season this year if Ryan Tannehill doesn't step up. Nick Petit Frere, and then Hassan Haskins is their new probably running back too, most likely. So, their 50-50 games include the following. They got a lot of them. They got New York Giants, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, ×2, Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Philly, the Chargers, Dallas, Jacksonville at least once. It's a tough stretch for them. The AFC South has it tough in general this year. They have to play the AFC West and the NFC East, both of which are good divisions this coming year for the most part. There are some bad teams in at least one of those divisions, but the AFC West is probably going to be the most competitive in football this year, and we'll talk about that later. But just looking at it, I predict that their ceiling is probably 10-7, and their floor could be as low as 5-12 if they regress, if they have a lot of problems this year getting started. I do think they finish with a losing record this year. I think they're going to finish 7-10. If they play to their strengths, if they lean on Henry and he can stay healthy, that 10-7, or maybe, just maybe, 11-6. But 10-7 is probably reasonable if they are able to stay healthy and commit to the run and really put 150, 200 rushing yards on teams a game. That will be their saving grace. Their defense is a little suspect, though they did improve that this offseason. We'll see what happens with them. Moving on to the next team, I want to talk about the bottom feeder of this division, the Texans. They are still very bad. Doesn't really matter. They were going to be a few years away from getting better. They're the only team this year in the draft that, when you go to Pro Football Focus, they said they needed literally every position. Now, I disagree with that. I think Davis Mills was a better overall player for them. I think he had some good moments last year. I think he won them a couple of games last year. So I think they could roll with him. But when you lose Deshaun Watson, which, again, Cleveland situation, we'll see what happens. I think they're happy to be rid of him, but now there are more allegations coming out, and very likely the Texans are going to be culpable in a large amount of whatever he had going on. And, if that's the case, then rightfully so. They deserve everything that they get going forward from that. But anyways, new things for them. We've got Lovie Smith as a new coach this year. He's been away from the professional game since 2015. I'm not sure why they hired him. I don't know if they're just trying to do it for diversity's sake, but Lovie Smith has not been a good coach since about 2012, really even before that. He's been at Illinois and has a losing record every single year since 2016 there. So I don't think he was a good addition to him. I don't know why they wouldn't go with Brian Flores if they were really trying to get a diversity hire. Flores would have been an amazing guy. I don't know if they were scared away because of the possible lawsuit issue with him, but he would have been a much better, much better coach for him. And I think he's proven that he's a winning coach. So I don't know. I think that was really dumb, but maybe the market just really wasn't there. But I think Flores made a lot more sense than Lovie Smith. But just looking at their 50-50 games, Indianapolis, they could steal one. They've got Jacksonville twice. Tennessee, I think they do win one of those. They've got Chicago, the Giants, the Washington Football Commies, and the Cleveland Browns, depending. Again, if Deshaun Watson is playing, this is not a 50-50 game. They're going to get the crap kicked out of them. But, again, the teams they've got to play that they're probably going to lose to: Denver, Chargers, the Raiders, the Eagles, the Dolphins, Dallas Cowboys, Kansas City, Indianapolis a couple of times. It's going to be a tough sled. So, guys that they picked up, they've got 3 new QBs in addition to Davis Mills, none of which are particularly good. They've got Marlon Mack, Chris Conley, and Brandon Cooks ended up re-signing. A.J. Cann, Malik Collins, Christian Kirksey. And guys they picked up in the draft, they did get Derek Stingley. I thought they should have gone with probably Evan O'Neal, but again, they went with a corner, probably the best corner in the draft. And I don't think he'll be good this year, but probably in 2 to 3 years he'll be okay. They ended up taking John Mechie, which I think is an underrated pick from Alabama. And they also got Christian Harris, Damian Pierce, who should be competing for the starting role at running back, and then Thomas Booker as well. And again, they lost Deshaun Watson, Jordan Atkins, Terrence Mitchell, Jacob Martin, and David Johnson. So they're going to be bad. Their ceiling is probably only 6-11. Their floor is probably 2-15. I don't think they go 0-17 this year. I don't think they're quite that bad. But I do have them finishing 4-13 this year overall, which will firmly place them in the bottom of the division. Moving on, we've got the Colts, who I think are probably going to be the division leader this year. Their 50-50 games include Kansas City, Tennessee a couple of times, Denver, New England, Las Vegas, New Orleans Saints, the Chargers, Philadelphia, Dallas, and Minnesota. Now, I look for them probably to be truly 50-50 on that record. They've got some easy games mixed in there as well, but they're notable additions. They got Matt Ryan. These guys finished 9-8 last year and just barely missed the playoffs by losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars on the last week. If they'd won that game, they'd be in the playoffs. And they had Carson Wentz, who couldn't stay healthy, was fumbling the ball left and right, and just in general looked bad for them last year. They're going to be running the ball with Jonathan Taylor, and that's going to be where their strength is. They still have a lot of strength on the offensive line. They're going to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So they are probably going to be much better this year, even with a tougher schedule, because they're actually going to be able to – I think they're the only team in this division that can compete with some of these really tough opponents. So, again, things that they've had. They got Matt Ryan in a trade with the Falcons. Really hurt me to see him go, but I understand. They re-signed Mo Ali Cox. They've got Yannick Ngakoue they re-signed, and they signed Stephon Gilmore. Guys they picked up in the draft, Alec Pierce, he should be a good wide receiver for them. And then Jelani Woods at tight end, Bernard Raymond at guard or tackle, and then Nick Cross as well. Guys that they lost, Wentz, which is probably addition by subtraction. They did lose Marlon Mack. T.Y. Hilton is no longer on the team. I really wish he could have stayed on some way because I think he would have a renaissance of his career with Matt Ryan. And then they also lost Xavier Rhodes, George Odom, Chris Reed, and Julian Davenport. So again, their ceiling I think is probably 12-5 because they could be a very very good team. I don't think they quite reach that, but I think they're going to be a very competitive team overall. Their floor I only see at about 9-8, so I think they're going to have a winning record no matter what. And then they should win the division. I do have them going 10-7 just when I run everything out. I could easily flip a couple of those games and make them that 12-5 or at least 11-6. There's a couple of 50-50s, and I think I gave the Jaguars credit one time for beating them. So flip that game around, and they're 11-6 with probably the 3 or 4 seed overall in the AFC. And then finally, just talking about the Jaguars, kind of a team. They're back-to-back let's rephrase it. Back-to-back worst overall team in the NFL, having the first overall pick 2 years in a row. First time that's happened ever, and they're going for a three-peat, it looks like, though probably not going to happen. I think Carolina, Atlanta, and Houston are all worse than them this year, though they should be picking in the top 10 again this year. The Jaguars, their 50-50 games include the Commies, Houston twice, Indianapolis, the Giants, the Raiders, maybe, Detroit, the Titans twice, and the Jets. So they have to play the AFC West. Again, I don't think they win any of those games except maybe the Raiders, but I still think the Raiders are going to be a heavy favorite there. And then they have the NFC East. The Commies are the only team they should beat there. They should not beat any of the other teams. Even the Giants they shouldn't beat. And then they got Baltimore as well as another game that they just shouldn't have any business winning at all. And nobody can say that the Jaguars have not been willing to try and shake things up. They really have screwed up the market for wide receivers with what they spent. So Christian Kirk, former number 3 guy at the Arizona Cardinals, just got paid like a wide receiver 1. He's getting paid $72 million guaranteed, which makes him the number 14 overall highest paid receiver going into the 2022 season. That's ridiculous. There are at least 10 or 15 guys that are better than him that are not being paid the level that he is. However, the Jaguars believe that he could be a number 1 guy overall. I disagree, but they're paying him wide receiver 1 money, and he's going to have to perform like it, or this is going to be a very Jacksonville type move. Other guys that they brought on, they've got Zay Jones, also paid him $30 million, probably a little questionable there. Laquan Treadwell, Foley Fatukasi, I don't know how to say that guy's name. Foye Oluokun out of Atlanta, they paid him $45 million. Good for him. From my perspective as a Falcons fan, he was good. He's not $45 million good. So they are overpaying guys left and right. They also got Darius Williams. And then with number 1 overall pick, they took Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. I want to say that that's a good move. Only time is going to tell. He doesn't have a whole lot of sacks in his career, but he was a presence on the Georgia defensive line. He was really good at containing and putting pressure on the quarterback and containing the run. He's a presence and a physical freak, but I don't know if that's going to translate to the NFL. I think he would have been better being picked about 8 to 10 overall and not number 1, but still, a guy that's probably really, really talented and should make that team better. They got Devin Lloyd, who I think is actually a better pick at 20 overall. I think Devin Lloyd was possibly a top 10 or top 15 pick, and they got a steal on him trading back up. Then they also got Luke Fortner and Chad Mumma. They had a couple other draft picks, but nothing worthwhile to note. And then their notable losses, they did lose DJ Shark, who was their number 1 wide receiver. I still think he is better than Christian Kirk. They lost Jack O'Shaughnessy at tight end, and then they also lost Andrew Norwell. They didn't really have a lot of talent that would be particularly noted if they didn't have them on the team anymore. So they've really just potentially gotten better and shouldn't be a whole lot worse. The biggest addition by subtraction by far is the loss of Urban Meyer. I have said it before. I will say it again. Urban rubs me the wrong way. He rubbed me the wrong way when he was at Florida with me being a Georgia person. He just never seemed to have any class about him. There are his fans and his defenders that will say different. I never saw that in the entire time that he was at Florida, Ohio State, and it just came out in spades when he became the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So again, I think they're going to go, ceiling 8-9, floor 4-13. I do think they finish 5-12. But anyways, that would put the Colts winning the division, Tennessee Titans being second, the Jaguars being third, and Houston being last. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, consider hitting the like button and subscribing. It'll help us out. And until next time, rise up.